Welcome back to BadgerBlitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. Once again, I am Matt Perkins, joined as I am every week by Rivals.com national analyst and my good friend Clint Cosgrove. Clint, like we always say, buddy, best time of the week.
Best time of the week. Let's go. Let's be awesome, and let's talk some ball, man.
Yeah, man, let's absolutely be awesome today. We're going to talk staffing today. We're going to talk coaching, coaches, an approach to building a coaching staff, because a lot of the questions we've been getting from the Badgers Den, and please keep them coming, guys, have been a lot to do with how will the program how can the program restructure their coaching approach in order to better facilitate recruiting, in order to really maximize, the advantages that they can have on the recruiting trail. So in one of the things, we don't want to speculate about specific coaches who have current jobs and things like that right now, because it is so up in the air, especially at this point of the year. I think speculating on certain names is inappropriate, and neither you nor I have enough information on the actual coaching carousel, coaching maneuver things to really sort of be able to figure out, okay, who's going to be the Badgers quarterback coach next year. But what I think will be a productive discussion for us, Clint, is to sort of figure out, okay, how can the Badgers actually staff up the, offensive side of the ball, especially, you would imagine. And one of the things that we know about Jimmy, he has a lot of NFL ties. But, we've seen mixed results bringing coaches from the NFL back down to the college ranks. Bobby Ingram, jury's still out on him so far. If you were sort of the GM, the director of football ops, if you will, how would you look to, sort of staff up your program? And, is it important to bring guys in from the pro ranks? Do you want to stick just with guys from college ranks? How would you sort of approach that?
I think there's a number of ways to approach it, and there's actually going to be a number of variables that come into play, in the near future. There is a plan to make basically unlimited on the field coaching positions, which will, teams right now, they have them as analysts and they actually go on the field and coach, but they're not supposed to. You can get dinged with an NCAA violation. There's different levels of analysts or quality controls and stuff like that. So I think they're trying to fix that dilemma where it's enforced at some places and it's not at others. And in order to do that, they're going to go with, it sounds like, unlimited staffs. Now, when I say unlimited staffs, it's going to be only a certain amount of those guys will be allotted as being able to go on the road and recruit. So I think there's a number of ways that you can approach it. Now, let's start with the way you approach it before that rule comes into play. And I think you need a very good mix of young, energetic recruiters who have ties to specific areas that you are going to target and take talent from. You've got to have guys who can walk in and compete with the best of the best to steal. You don't got to steal every kid, but you can't be afraid to go up against the top teams in the nation for an elite prospect. The worst they can say is no. And you got to hire people who have the cojones to do that, aren't afraid, have connections, and people trust and respect in those areas that you're recruiting.
So what are those areas? So give us, I last week on the show advocated for the need of, doubling down in Kansas City. What are some of those other areas that you think they really need to be targeting if they are going to maximize what they have?
A lot of that's going to depend on the recruiting budget and how wide they want to cast the net. I don't see Wisconsin as a team that needs to recruit nationally, as I don't know if it would be worth the resources to be sending guys out to California and Washington and, all over the place just for the chance at a kid. When putting the staff together, I would look for guys that have connections in specific areas and have proven to be able to get talent from those areas. But without knowing who that staff would be, if I'm making a recruiting blueprint for Wisconsin, I'm kind of doing the 500-mile radius. I'm thinking, heavy in Chicago, heavy in Wisconsin, obviously, dabble in Michigan, dabble in Ohio. I think, Wisconsin's had success in New Jersey and PA in the past. I don't think you need to major in it, but if you have somebody with connections there, those can be important areas. And then, like you said, St. Louis, Kansas City, the Kansas side of Kansas City as well. Iowa is starting to have more and more talent, similar to Wisconsin, though. It can be hard to take an in-state kid from there. But it doesn't hurt to try, because it's really an easy trip. And, you can be very targeted in your approach in a state like Iowa, because there's not just hundreds of players where you're just pounding the pavement looking for them.
One of the things that I've, really noticed about, as we talk about, recruiting and staffing and how those go hand in hand, has been, I think a guy like Bobby Ingram, who hasn't really been around the college, college football itself in a while. He's been in the NFL bubble for a long time. Just how different is college football from the NFL right now in terms of coaching, and B, how different is recruiting nowadays, even from let's say 5 years ago, in terms of how you interact with recruits?
Yeah, I mean, both of those are huge. So let me start with just the difference between the NFL and college in terms of coaching. A good coach is a good coach no matter what. They can teach, they can get the most out of their players, they can coach their players hard, and their players will listen and respond because they know that they care for them. So that's the number one thing. Number one trait in coaching overall is you can get the most out of your players if they know that you're looking out for their best interest, you love them up, and they will allow you to coach them hard if you have that connection. So that's first and foremost, whether it's an NFL coach or a college coach, in my opinion. Now, the differences are pretty drastic. In the NFL, you are more managing a room. You are more installing and working on X's and O's stuff. I don't know how much individual time they do in the NFL. I don't know how much technique is taught in the NFL, because a lot of these guys are making more money than the coaches. And their number one thing that they're looking for out of a coach is, how is this person going to keep me in the league for as long as possible? And, the old school approach to coaching is, your back pedal will be done this way. You will break out of your break this way. You are going to run a route this way. And I don't think that is the way that you coach today. There needs to be some freedom. Now, you play within the scheme, within certain technique. I mean, there's certain things, body mechanics wise, that are always going to be a negative. Like if you get wide outside your base and stuff like that, I mean, those are going to be taught at all levels. But I think to be a great college coach, not only do you have to have that love and respect from the kids, you do have to be able to coach them hard, but you really got to work on technique and making things easy. Football can be overly complicated, even in its easiest sense, if not taught the correct way. You need to break it down in a way that the kids can easily understand it. And in college, opposed to the pros, you only have so much time with them. So there's a lot of times where these NFL coaches come in and they're used to having as much time as they want with these guys. And, their players don't have school. They don't have social obligations. They don't have, a study table, all of these things. So they come in with the approach that I know all of this. And so they're going to know all of this, and then we'll just be better because we know more about football and X's and O's. And that just doesn't work in college. I mean, one of the biggest things that I saw in the heyday of the zone read and the RPO, when that was first coming out, you had a lot of NFL guys that were hired as defensive coordinators, for instance, at the college level, and they had absolutely zero clue how to stop it. They were getting out schemed. And then NFL teams saw that, and they started going to college offensive coordinators to learn how to run these plays, how to run the RPOs, how to create, predicaments with the defense and such. So I think you can have NFL coaches on your staff. I think there are some phenomenal coaches in the NFL because that is all they do. All they do is football. They coach, they watch film, they do X's and O's. They're not worried about recruiting. But I think that at the same time, you can be the best football mind ever, but if you don't understand that you're working with kids who are learning the game, who are still developing mentally, who are going to class, and you try to overload them with your knowledge because you know a lot about football, it does a big disservice to the kids. So I think you have to be very careful with how you approach your NFL hires, and that's just my opinion. But I've seen it through and through. And most guys who have gone from college to the NFL and back, I think they understand it a lot better. But after college coaches have gone to the NFL and come back, they usually want to go back to the NFL because recruiting is totally different nowadays. This is a 24/7 grind when it comes to recruiting, and kids are different. Kids see the world different. They are enabled. They have options. Everything is so public that they can leverage that to their own advantage, and they don't accept the status quo of, I committed somewhere, so I'm staying there, or my coach said I needed to go here, or, I'm doing bad by somebody else when they see kids getting dropped by teams all the time. And so I think it's a new generation of kids who need to be taught different, not all of them, but they take a different approach to everything. They see the world differently. They've been through COVID and seen how their teammates got screwed over in recruiting. NIL comes into play, the transfer portal. People are going to learn a lot of lessons in the transfer portal where the grass isn't always greener on the other side, because a lot of great players don't have anywhere to go. And they're still caught up that they were an elite player in high school and haven't done anything in college.
Clint, I want to talk about NIL for a second. We didn't plan on this, but I had to bring it up because you brought something up in the Badgers Den. For all of you out there, if you're not subscribed yet, get into BadgerBlitz.com these days. There is a free first month right now during the Badgers coaching search. So head over to BadgerBlitz.com and sign up today. You will get access to the special message boards, including the Badgers Den. Clint, one of the interesting things you said is I think a lot of people seem to think that every college kid is getting these, $50,000, $100,000 deals through NIL, when the vast majority of them are really not deciding college based on NIL money or having that be the number one thing. Correct? And I think this is something that really needs to be clarified, because I hear so many people throwing about, NIL this, NIL that, NIL this, NIL that. And it's starting to drive me up a wall because it actually is such a small portion of the pie. And it just seems like something that people want to gripe about.
Yeah, I mean, it's the new trend. It's the new generation of football. And it seems to be the new arms race, not so much facilities arms race anymore. Now it's the NIL arms race. But in reality, and it's hard to gauge this, and that's why a lot of people are forced to speculate if they aren't talking with recruits day in and day out. And a lot of recruits don't want to talk about it either, because it almost seems unnatural after years of, being paid to play, being illegal. But there's a very, very, very small percentage of players that are getting $1 million deals out of high school. I mean, technically, there isn't pay for play. So you've got to consider that right off the bat. Now, due to the lack of transparency, there is ways around it. I not to, poke fun at anything at all, but like when Wisconsin was supposedly in on the quarterback last year who ended up at USC, and all of a sudden they tried to get all this NIL money together. And I just, from talking to people who were part of that fundraising campaign, they came up with $200,000 pretty quick. For a player who is going to make a decision based off NIL, he already had a Beats deal with Dre. So the second he signed there, he had that. Wisconsin's not going to compete with that. Very few programs are. And very few programs are going to go out on a limb and spend millions of dollars in what might be considered a shady transaction for a kid that is unproven based off of their high school potential. There's a very small number of players that are walking into millions of dollars right out of high school. Now, that being said, there are players that are making $100,000 who aren't highly rated, and a lot of that depends on the school that they sign with. Some of these schools will try to use upfront money to, bring a kid in with no promise of any further money. That's up to them to earn that on the field, and
it's a signing bonus.
Yes, basically a signing bonus. I've heard stories of a certain team or two that, the second those kids signed, there was money put in the bank account. The financial managers took out the tax percentages. And regardless of they were the top kid in the class or the bottom kid in the class, they got that original signing bonus. Now, the real money is going to come eventually when NIL operates the way it is supposed to. And this is where I think it is important that the infrastructure is in place. The people are in place. The collectives are in place. And there is a go-between hired by the university that is that person that connects the collectives and the companies with the athletes and the coaches. And if you don't have that infrastructure in play long term, it is going to hurt, because kids know that they are going to get paid if they go to a certain place and they perform. But at the end of the day, the performance is what is going to determine the pay in the long term if you aren't basically a bonus baby coming out of high school. Most of these kids through collectives getting $3-4 grand a month at Power 5 schools. I know the assumption is if you're a Rivals 250 guy, you're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've talked to many Rivals 250 guys who know that they're going to get something and there's a plan in place when they get to that school, but they don't know what that is. They've had the conversations. They've sat down with the NIL coordinator. This is the infrastructure we have in place. Here are the opportunities. Now, how do we capitalize on that once you are here? But the money up front isn't as blatant as many people think it is, and the amount of kids making their decisions strictly off money up front is far and few between. And that's typically guys who are getting generational wealth numbers and making a decision to change their family's trajectory forever. And I understand that. I don't blame anybody for that. Especially if my family's not well off financially, and somebody, even $100,000 is going to come my way, and that can get us out of some trouble and debt or whatever it may be. That's a hard thing to pass up. So I don't want to understate the importance of NIL, because it's here to stay and it is big time. But there are various ways that these kids are going to make money, and a lot of it is not coming up front. You just got to have the infrastructure in place. You've got to show them that this is how you can make money and will make money when you are here and you have success. And a program like Wisconsin that isn't going to be paying a quarterback $8 to $10 million out of high school, that just is never going to happen. All right. So that's a reality. But the percentage of those kids that are getting that, and I think you'll see at the front end, like we're seeing right now, there's more of those kids than there will even be down the line as this progresses. Alabama, they've been kind of sticklers. I don't know the ins and outs of it about the pay for play stuff, but what they have done is they have a fan shop now in the stadium. It's set up in partnership with Fanatics, where these guys are able to sell signed memorabilia, game worn jerseys, NFTs, and that is where the money is at long term.
That's what I was going to say. And also, the CEO of Fanatics has long been someone who's actually been very forward thinking about a lot of this stuff. And so I would hope that more schools would take this model that Alabama has, right? I feel like that is sort of like the epitome of what it's supposed to be, right? It's like, oh yeah, this guy's my favorite player. This guy's my favorite player. I want to buy a Bryce Young jersey. I don't want to just buy a generic Alabama jersey. I want to buy that Bryce Young jersey, right? And now I want to get that Young with the number 9 on the back of it. And right, he wears number 9, I think. God, I hope I got that right. Okay, phew. I was worried for a second there, but I want the Young and the 9 on the back of that, and then he deserves his cut of that because I'm buying that because of him. I'm not buying that because of any other player at Alabama. And so like that
No, no
that is like the, I guess, like the platonic ideal of NIL. But I guess it's not supposed to be this, as you said, pay for play, like signing bonus kind of thing. And I think that what some people who are throwing the money at this right now are quickly going to realize it's not the best investment when you're when you're throwing down, because I mean, you guys at Rivals know what the hit rate is. I mean, you guys are rivals and competitors all have a relatively similar hit rate when it comes to who makes the NFL, but you just don't know. 2 stars, 5 stars, 3 stars, 4. At the end of the day, they're 17-year-old kids, right? And so betting millions of dollars on 17-year-old kids may not be the best use of your investments.
100%. And think about this. The NFL hires private investigators. They have a combine. They do research. They do mental testing. They talk to therapists. They know everything about these guys, and they still hit at a not very high rate. There's just certain traits, certain variables that you cannot predict. The physical, you can. The ability, you can. The adjustment, the adaptation, and the grit are very hard to predict sometimes.
The work ethic.
So, no question. Like, you don't just show up to college at the Division I level and dominate because you're talented. There's people with less talent who will beat your face off because they want it more. They're more physical. They work harder than you, and they understand the game better.
Yeah, they're more prepared.
About their play. Yep. And so you are 100% correct. Like, it's just NIL. Don't get it twisted. This is a big part. This is the next generation of football. You talk about the Bryce Young jersey. Think about all of the players who had their jerseys sold over the years. I couldn't even call up an authentic jersey shop and get my own last name on a jersey because it wasn't licensed. And so nowadays, if you're a Heisman contender, like I look at Tennessee's quarterback right now, if they've got a jersey sale of his going on, kid's probably made $1 million in the past week alone. So to me, that's where the money's at. That's where you're going to find your best investments, because what happens when you offer a 17-year-old kid $8 to $10 million to stay somewhere for 3 years? He's not ready to play. You don't like seeing your investment on the sideline. All of a sudden, your investment's in the game. The team goes to crap. The coach gets fired, and we're back to square one. So
there's the lesson with NIL, and that is where we're going to wrap it up today. You guys can always check out Clint at Rivals_Clint on all the social media. I am at _Perko_. Check me out on my podcast with Matt the Hebrew Hammer Bernstein. We had a great one last week with Joel Nellis. That was actually an all-timer. I think one of our best ones that we had. So make sure to check that out. And
my old grade school football teammate.
I know.
We played on the West Side Spartans together.
You guys really could have been something if you'd all stuck together.
Yeah, we all went to different places. That was the problem.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can check out Clint's former teammate on the podcast this weekend, Jimmy Leonard's best friend. So had some really interesting insights, I think, that you won't find anywhere else if you are into the Badgers. So but until next time.